another one.
To automate or not to automate? That is the question. So, what to automate and what not to automate? I'm confused on what to automate really. I just did some login testing of my company's app with PyTest. For those who don't know, PyTest is a testing framework for Python. For those who are learning Python, right? You might want to implement some unit testing in your password manager or password generator. I'm just saying. The manager told me that automation is not really needed in that case because unit tests do that. Now, I don't write unit tests, but the developers do. One thing I've noticed is that developers in my company only write unit tests by giving just one input and don't cover edge cases. My manager told me to think of other use cases where Selenium will come in handy and will be very, very efficient. So, first and foremost, let's start our timer. Now, Selenium being efficient, that seems like a contradiction of terms. Why does that seem that way? Because it is a contradiction of terms. Selenium is not efficient. Playwright is not efficient. Cypress is not efficient. UI tests are simply not efficient. You should be going towards, business logic API tests first, and then you use your Selenium test for those cases that, for some end-to-end tests and stuff like that, but that should not be the bulk of your automation test. But that's not necessarily your question. Your question stems around unit test versus your QA automation test. Now, my question to you is, how well does your manager know what the developers are doing? Does your manager oversee the developers, or do they only oversee QA and their hope and anticipation is that the developers are having good unit test coverage? Now, that does, you see, and here's a problem. Here's another problem I just noticed, right? You guys are not seeing the in between. You guys are seeing that there's unit test or there's Selenium tests, but there's a whole world in between there. There's the API test, the integration test, the component test. And what does a unit test do? A unit test simply tests a single functional unit of code. Now, if the developers are writing unit tests that only have one input, then that's a failure. They should be testing the different edge cases, such as if you are doing if you have some type of boundaries or inputs, you got to do some boundary testing. So if it can't be between, if the value can be between 0 and 50, then you would want to check 9, 10, 11, right? 9 should fail, 10 should pass, 11 should pass. And then you'd want to test 49, 50, and 51. 49 should pass, 50 should pass, and 51 should fail. And those should be part of the unit test. But that doesn't negate, but that's just one functional part. What's going on over here? There we go. So that's just one part of it. Outside, you're just testing that single function or module or whatever the case may be. You need to expand to say, all right, now when the API is connecting to the database and things are happening, things are moving, those are where you're gonna have your unit tests. So you're gonna have to have your test to post, your test to your test to get, your test to patch, your test to put. And then once you can verify that all of those are working, that all the backend functionality is working, because the backend is going to serve the front end. Then you can say, okay, what kind of end-to-end test? So let's say you're working on an e-commerce, right? So you might want to test like the most critical front end parts, like logging in, checking out as a existing user, checking out as a new user, checking out as a guest, creating a new account. Those you want to have an automation flow for, because those are the critical functionality. Loading a product page, and that would be like within the flow of checking out as a guest or something like that, or checking out whatever type of checkout you're doing, right? It'll be within that flow. But you can't be you can't be like, oh, it's either unit test or UI test. There's a whole world in the middle, and the world in the middle is going to be it's going to be the most important test. So the unit test super important, right? Because you're testing your code base, making sure all of that works. You're going to have the most you should have a lot of unit tests, hundreds, maybe thousands of unit tests, because you're supposed to be quick. You should be able to run them, and you get feedback in like 30 seconds, a minute at the most. Now, when you start expanding out, the further you get away from the code, the further you get away from the code, the longer it's going to take your test to run. So now, when you start your API test, where you're connecting to database and integration and stuff like that, that's going to be a little bit longer. But even with API tests, we're thinking about we're looking from seconds to minutes. All right, second to minutes. And once that's done, now we can start focusing on our UI tests, which those take longer, but you should have a minimal amount of those. Only the ones that are the most important, the critical paths. We're not just going to be automating, can I click on the About Us page? Can I click on the Contact Us page? Maybe you might want to automate filling out the Contact Us form, but we're not going to be automating every single scenario on the UI because it's inefficient, it's slow, you're going to get flaky tests, right? So that is so that's what, when you're thinking about automation, one last bit. As a QA engineer, you are responsible for the quality. I mean, everyone's responsible, but the onus, you own it, the quality of the software. So if you see the software engineers are not properly covering the test scenarios, then you have to say, hey, we need unit tests to cover these other scenarios as well. You can't just write one input. You're going to need to write like all the necessary inputs for the unit test. And then you're also going to have to say, okay, we also need to start implementing API tests or database tests or whatever the case may be. Whatever test you need, you have to start implementing that. And then that's where the value add is in your role as a QA engineer. It's not just sitting back and being dictated to what needs to be done, but you're offering your insight and your expertise into all of these different topics. I have no fear jumping into a conversation with the developers and say, hey, we need to do this. Hey, this is the deadline that we're looking at. This is the risk that we're facing. And if we don't have the proper unit test, sometimes things happen like, hey, did we have unit tests around this? And sometimes the developers even say, oh yeah, we because I'll ask, do we need to write some type of how do we test this? And he says, you know what, this can be covered with a unit test. I'm like, all right, cool. And sometimes like, okay, yes, we need some automation tests for this. So that is the type of thing that to grow as a QA engineer, you also need to think of that as well. All right. So with that being said, that is that question. Let's wrap that one up.
Scrolling through my phone, I can find a spark. Each day feels like a bug in a broken arc. But my lines of code know me better than they do. In love with these scripts, they hold me true. Conversations fizzle, hearts feel like a chore. Bad dates come and go, but the code's always there. Lines of love in the night, pulling me from despair. These fleeting connections can't break through the strain. I'm lost in these programs, I'm coding my pain. Dining on hopes, but the vibe feels so wrong. Wondering if I can fix what's taking too long. But while dinner gets cold, my thoughts start to race. I'd rather be debugging in my own safe space. Is it me or the code that keeps me awake? Bad days come and go, but the code's always there. Lines of love in the night, pulling me from despair. These fleeting connections can't break through the strain. hopes, but the vibe feels so wrong. Wondering if I can fix what's taking too long. But while dinner gets cold, my thoughts start to race. I'd rather be debugging in my own safe space. Is it me or the code that keeps me awake? Awake. Bad days come and go, but the code's always there. Lines of love in the night, pulling me from despair. These fleeting connections can't break through the strain. I'm lost in these programs, I'm coding